Try to give me a countdown to 10.
Yes, Lieutenant Governor Patrick will be speaking at any moment. He is here at FWISD board meeting to demand the resignation of Superintendent Kent Scribner. This after we issued guidance on the transgender bathroom policy stating that transgender students can use the restroom that corresponds with their gender identity. Board President Sidney Ramos issued a statement earlier today saying that the board has enormous confidence in Dr. Scribner and is focused on creating a strong, safe, and productive learning environment for all students. On Newport 198 headquarters, News Radio 1080 KRLA.
Thank you for coming today. My name is Dan Patrick, Lieutenant Governor. Yesterday I asked for the resignation of the superintendent over the transgender guidelines that were published. When you ask for someone's resignation, you owe an explanation why. And that's one of the reasons I came here today. I believe this policy is ill-advised, it's wrong-headed, it violates the Texas Education Code, specifically in one area dealing with parents' information. But more than that, this policy does nothing to improve a student's chances of graduating, to help prepare them for a career, to help prepare them for college, to improve their reading skills or their math skills. In fact, of the 79,000 students in Fort Worth Independent School District, 12,000 are in poor performing schools. 18 elementary schools are poor performing. 2 middle schools, 1 senior school. The job of the superintendent is not to be a social engineer. The job of the superintendent is to prepare his students who are in struggling schools. I want to talk about this policy a little bit, but first, let me echo something that most of you know. As former chair of education, I spent 8 years in education, public education at the Texas Senate. Everyone in the Capitol knows public education is my passion. It is our passion because the future of Texas and the future of every child depends on a quality education. And this guideline on transgender policies does nothing to enhance that child's education. Some have said, well, it's a local issue. Why is the state involved? It has state implications, national implications. We also invest $342 million in our last budget, close to $350 million in funding for the school district. That's taxpayer money from across the state. So the state has a say without question. I want to talk about a couple of issues that I'm concerned about. We'll take questions after the press conference. Number one is the Texas Education Code 26.008 makes no doubt that students cannot keep their parents out of information about their activities in schools. Parents have a right to know unless there is some type of abuse or danger at home. And in that case, it's not up to the school to decide that. They turn that over to the police, to authorities to investigate. So in the guidelines, it says here that student transitions, prior to notifying any parent or guardian regarding the student's gender identity or any potential transition process, school personnel must work closely with the student to assess the degree to which, if any, the parent or guardian has been or will be involved in the process. That's a violation of the law. Now, I realize the superintendent's only been in Texas for 6 months, but you don't issue guidelines without knowing the law. Secondly, in Texas Education Code 2011, it details what the role of the superintendent is. And one of his jobs is, when it comes to policies, is to put those policies and guidelines before a board. Let the board vote. Let the people testify. Let the people have input. Local control is not about any one superintendent saying, this is my policy, and never taking it to the board, never taking it to the people. And that's what happened in this case. If you look at the policy in general, in other areas, and I've cited 2 code concerns that I have, I don't know the number of transgender students in Fort Worth Independent School District. I don't know if the district totally knows. But we know it's a small number. Now, I want every student protected. In fact, in 2011, Senate Bill 205 by the Dean of the Senate, John Whitmire, I voted for that bill, which directed school districts to create policies to prevent harassment and bullying. whether it was online or in the classroom. I do not want, and no one in the legislature wants any student for any reason bullied or harassed. This guideline is supposedly based on Title IX. Well, it's a fantasy of whoever wrote this, whether it was the legal team at the school district or the superintendent himself. But Title IX talks about we protect a person and no one should be discriminated based on many categories, including sex. That was a law in 1972. Sex in Title IX does not talk about transgender transition. This is something that people interpreting Title IX are putting forth. It has no basis in law or no basis in fact. In fact, let's talk about this. In the superintendent's guidelines, he says that every student who is consistent in their gender identity, and by the way, that's right for a lawsuit. Who determines what consistent means? But any student who's consistent in their gender identity can participate in any sport. So that means if a young man feels as though his gender identity is that of a female, he could participate, whether it's entering the homecoming contest, the prom queen contest, or playing on the girls' basketball team. Well, UIL rules, the University Interscholastic League, just this past February, passed a rule that based on the gender of your birth certificate is the sports that you will play in. So this guideline also, not only it goes against common sense, against the education code, is based on a mythical law about Title IX and what it means, but it also goes against current UIL rules. My point is, you can see very quickly, this was not well thought out. That's what happens when a superintendent decides, on the advice of a few, to put forth a policy of his own on social engineering. I think had he come to the board, had he come to the parents, had he come to any elected official and said, this is what I would like to do, give me your thoughts, where do we go? Well, here's one direction. Going back to my position, and I think everyone's position, that no child should be harassed or bullied for any reason. For any reason. And I have very strong credentials in protecting students from being bullied or harassed. In legislation I've passed, the millions of dollars I've raised for students who have been harassed, students with special needs and disabilities, cameras in the classroom to protect students, my credentials are solid on that. But let's talk about this. This policy says that if a transgender student wants to use the girls' room or the girls' locker room, if there's another student who's uncomfortable, then that student should be allowed to be pulled out, taken to a separate bathroom. That student, if they're uncomfortable, should be allowed to leave. So, does that mean in the locker rooms? Yes. Does that mean in the bathroom? Yes. So, if there are 1% of the students who are transgender in the school district, maybe that's 400 or 500, that means 78,000 students and parents have to change their behavior for a few hundred students. Wouldn't it have been a better path to follow to say, if there's a transgender student who feels they need special assistance or special need, then you can help that student and make sure that they have the privacy and the dignity that they deserve. So this policy is just poorly written, poorly thought out, but most importantly, beyond, I believe, breaking Texas education code and law, it's not what a superintendent's job is about. That's not what it's about. When parents leave their children at the schoolhouse door or at the school bus stop, they expect their students' rights and privacy to protect as well. And in this case, the superintendent is putting the privacy and the comfort and the rights of 78 or 79,000 students in the backseat for a few. Once again, the superintendent needs to rescind this guideline, rescind this policy. I believe he needs to step down because he has acted in a way that superintendents should not behave. He's not focused on the real issue, which is educating students, getting them ready for their degree, a job in the workforce, a college degree. This has nothing to do with any of that. If he wants to try social engineering, he's in the wrong job. But I stand ready to protect every student from harassment and bullying. That's why I voted for that bill in 2011. This school district passed guidelines with a vote of the board in 2010 to stop harassment and bullying. And I stand ready to support that. But I do not support this. I do not believe the vast majority of parents in this school district or in Texas support this. And this will do nothing but bring chaos and confusion to the school day and make the already tough job that teachers have even that much more difficult. I'll take some questions.
Lieutenant Governor, you told Breitbart, Texas in 2014 that problems have to be fixed at the local level. You said, quote, if things are happening in that school or school district that parents are unhappy with, the school board needs to take action with the superintendent, and if it's not addressed, that's why we have elections to elect new school board members. Isn't this picking and choosing which issues you should get involved in from the outside of the state?
No, it's not picking and choosing, because in this case, the parents were shut out.
But shouldn't
And
the
I
school
have a
board decide
responsibility,
that?
and you have Senator Hancock here, you have a number of your House representatives here, Matt Rinaldi, Matt Shaheen, you have others here. We all represent the same people. Those parents are represented by their county elected officials, their city elected officials, their state elected officials, their statewide elected officials. We all have a responsibility to them. And in the normal process, if there's an issue that is about a school district, you would like to think that proper procedures are followed. Under Education Code, let me quote it for you again, 11201, it's the superintendent's responsibility in the Education Code to bring policies and ideas to the board, for the board to decide, and for the people to decide. In this case, they were left out. And quite frankly, and I know there are other legislators who couldn't be here tonight that would be standing here, and they're happy to do interviews after as well. If I didn't speak out, who was going to speak out? Who was going to say that this isn't right? Who was going to stand up and say, this is not the role of the superintendent? This is not the will of the parents? Who's going to say that? I stood up and said it. And today, our Attorney General has written a letter saying that he also believes the superintendent has violated potentially the Education Code, particularly on the parents' right to know. If you look at that guideline, what it says here is basically, we control your child. And remember, this is for all students. So a 9-year-old girl or a 10-year-old boy, whatever their age is, they're going to have this question of their gender, and the school is not going to tell their parents? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? The parents will be outraged. Rightfully so. Next question.
Governor, do you think the party platform should be updated to include a provision that addresses the transgender bathroom?
You know, I don't know every plank of the platform, and I'm happy to look at that and answer that question another day. Here's what I do. And this is all, you know, look, it's another issue. In Houston, you'll recall, there was a city ordinance dealing with adults, that men would be allowed in women's rooms. Now, the city of Houston is roughly 65% Democrat, so this is not a partisan issue, by the way, talking about the GOP platform. And despite the full effort of the mayor, who's a pretty powerful person, pretty popular, that was defeated by the people of Houston about 2-1, about 65% of the vote. Said, we don't want men going in ladies' rooms. You know, that's a different issue in this, but it's the same issue. You know, there is a right, whether you're a 9-year-old girl or a 17-year-old teenager or a 30-year-old woman, you should have a right to privacy and comfort and security in the ladies' room. That's just good old common Texas courtesy for women. And I'm always going to fight for that, whether they're 9 years old or my mom who's soon to be 90. Next question.
Mr. Lieutenant Governor, during your inaugural speech, you said that one of the things that you push for is local control. You know, that you don't want Washington, D.C. meddling in state issues. But here you are in the Fort Worth ISD taking exception to a policy.
I think I answered that question very clearly, not to cut you short. I answered the question. This local control is about local people having a say. The parents of this school district had no say. The school board had no say. As Lieutenant Governor, I am responsible for a multi-million-dollar educational budget. About $350 million of that went to this district. And when I see a superintendent violating the Texas Education Code, not doing what he was hired to do, when he was hired, I bet in his job interview, he didn't say, if you hire me in 6 months, you know what I'm going to do? I'm not going to worry about increasing the reading scores or the math scores. I'm not going to worry about those 12,000 students in those 18 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, and 1 failing high school. No, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pass transgender guidelines without anybody's input. I don't think he got their job. I think I've answered that question. Let me say something else.
Says that the policy was put in place in 2011.
No, the policy, make sure you all get this right. The policy that was put in place by the school district, which I support, because of the Senate Bill 205, which I talked about, was to prevent harassment and bullying of any student. This is a proactive, making special accommodations for students. That's totally different. So it's totally not the same. Don't get that confused. Let me say something else. If this were allowed, if this goes in place here, I believe it will be overturned in the courts. It will get to the courts. But if it's not turned back by the school board or by the people or by the superintendent, I believe that this is the biggest promotion for something that I feel strongly about, and that's school choice. It's one thing, and I've talked about this for years, because I support school choice. We passed the school choice bill out of the Senate last session. Because I'm worried about students, particularly in failing schools, many of our inner cities, because their parents are forced to send their children to a school because that's their zip code, even if it's a failing school. But I don't think a parent should be forced by their zip code to send their child to a school if they don't want their daughter stigmatized by having to raise their hand and say, I'm sorry, can you make special accommodations for me because I don't want this boy in the bathroom with me? Why should that girl be stigmatized? And why should that parent be forced to send their child to a school that's doing social engineering? That's not what public education is about. And if this country goes down the path of social engineering in our schools and takes their focus off of their real core mission, I believe you're going to see the end of the public school system as we know it. Because more people will homeschool. More people will try to go to private schools. More people will attend charter schools. This is not what parents signed up for.
Governor,
One more
Commissioner,
question. One more question.
Can you talk about what specific provisions you would support to help transgender students who are bullied or harassed at greater levels than their peers?
First of all, this you totally scrap. Okay? This is a non-starter. And I think, by the way, if the superintendent put this up to a vote of the parents of the district, he would find out it's a non-starter for the vast majority of them. What I said is that I have always supported and have a long record of support of students not being bullied and harassed. So if you have a transgender student, and again, I've worked a lot with disabled children primarily, and we have disabled children in our school system you wouldn't believe who have been bullied and harassed. Last session we passed the camera bill because we found that some disabled students were being mistreated by teachers, put in a file cabinet drawer. You wouldn't think that was possible. Or had cotton balls with vinegar stuffed in their mouths so they'd be quiet. You wouldn't think that's possible. But that was an investigative report by a TV station that discovered that. We passed a bill to put cameras in the classrooms to protect students. I believe in protecting every student. If there's a transgender student who feels like they're being harassed and bullied, we have laws in place to take care of that. And if they need special assistance from the school, then let that happen. But you don't turn the 78,000 other students on their head and say, we're switching everything for you, and now you're the one who has to say, I don't want to be a part of this. You're the 15-year-old girl who has to come to me and say, you know, I don't like that boy in my shower. I mean, the bill says, well, we'll make private accommodations. Why do we have to make private accommodations? And what are those private accommodations? How about when you walk back to a locker? I mean, I can go down the list. This guideline, by the way, is right for lawsuits every which way but Sunday. This is poorly written, poorly advised, and should never have been put upon the people. So, you know what, if the superintendent wants to pull it down, maybe he's learned from his mistakes, that'd be a good thing. But if he's going to insist, as he is so far, on pushing this through, again, he's not doing the job that I believe the parents expect him to do, and that's educate their kids, and I think he should resign. You have other representatives here who are happy to take questions. Senator Hancock, Matt Rinaldi, Matt Shaheen, other people who are here. Feel free to interview them. We're going to do some one-on-ones, I think, and thank you for coming out. Appreciate it.